Hey there friends, Andrea Walford here. Welcome to Make Beautiful Cards. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this masculine birthday card featuring Stampin' Up's Sailing Home stamp set and the coordinating smooth sailing dies. So today's card is actually a recreation of this Father's Day card that I created, but I loved the design so much I thought that it would be perfect for a masculine birthday card. All I have to do is just switch out the Father's Day greeting to a birthday greeting, and it's perfect for all the guys in your life. Now this card, as you can see, it's a multi-layered card, and there's lots of different types of paper and elements and layers in this. As we go through this, I'll introduce you to the products that I'm using. Keep in mind though that to recreate this card, you don't have to own everything I'm using. Feel free to substitute with what you have, and also feel free to omit some of the little layers or details to simplify this card. So the first thing I like to do when I'm creating or designing my cards is to create the main panel that I'm going to be stamping on or embellishing. In this case, it's this embossed panel that you see here, and I used the Seaside Spray cardstock. It's 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 of an inch. So as you can see, when you layer it onto a standard size note card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, it leaves this nice 1/4 inch border all around. Now to give it that really lovely texture that you can see here, I'm going to be using this embossing folder. This is from Stampin' Up and it's called the Subtle 3D Embossing Folder. Now when you open it up, you can see that the pattern does not extend all the way to the top. So when you're placing your cardstock in there, just make sure that the top edge of your cardstock is below the top edge of where the pattern starts. And then you're simply going to close this, and you're going to run it through your die cutting machine using the correct sandwich plate order. Once it's embossed, this is what it looks like, and you can see that it gives you a lovely texture on both sides. So really you could choose either side to be the front facing portion of your panel. Now the next element that I die cut was this stitched circle that you see here. Now this uses a die that comes from the Stitched Shapes dies, and as you can see, it gives you stitch shapes in 3 different shapes. There's circle, square, and oval, and you have 4 different sizes in each to choose from. So I used the second from the largest, and once again I die cut it out of this Seaside Spray cardstock. So this is what that die cut piece looks like. So next, I die cut these little seaweed elements that you see here, and I die cut them out of a type of paper called cardstock vellum. So this is what it looks like here, and as you can see, it's a somewhat heavyweight paper. So it's not as heavyweight as cardstock, but it's heavier weight than, let's say, copy paper, and it's also translucent. So it just gives a really nice subtle effect because the blue from the card background will kind of show through the seaweed. So you can see it, but it's not right there in your face. Now I die cut 2 using this die that comes with the smooth sailing die set, and this is the die set that coordinates with the main stamp set that we're using. So I just die cut 2 pieces out of my cardstock vellum using my die cutting machine, and then there you can see what that looks like. So now what we're going to do is we are going to stamp and color the sailboat. So this sailboat comes from the Sailing Home stamp set. You can see there's 2 different sizes, and I'm going to be using the larger of the sailboats. So I have here a scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock, and I'm using my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. So I'm making sure that my sailboat is well inked, and then I'm just going to stamp it onto this scrap cardstock piece like so. Now to color it, we're going to be using Stampin Blends, which are alcohol markers. Now, normally when I'm coloring with alcohol markers, for the most part, I tend to use the brush tip. So there's 2 different tip sizes. There's the brush tip and there's the bullet tip. And normally I will use the brush tip. But here, it's very fine lines and not a very big area. So I like to start with the bullet tip. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to color the, I think this is the boom, and then the main mast. And to do that, I'm going to use my light smoky slate marker. So using a very light touch, I'm just going to run the marker all the way up the center mast and then along the bottom of the sail. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color in the sail, and I'm going to do both of them in the same way. I'm starting with my light poppy parade, and I'm starting with the bullet tip, and very carefully using a very light touch, I'm just going to color along a straight line along this edge here. And that's just to make sure I lay down color without going over. I can't tell you the first time I stamped the stamp set how many times I ended up accidentally coloring outside the lines because it's so fine. So I found that the easiest way to add color was to simply start by using the bullet tip, doing a line, and then using the bullet tip to bring the color out here. So this is going to be the light area of my boat. Then I'm going to take my darkest marker, and this one is my light cherry cobbler. And the nice thing about this image is you already get a sense of where the shading is. So you can see here where it's darker. This is where we're going to be adding this dark cherry cobbler. Once again, I'm using my bullet tip. And then I'm just going to slowly and carefully run it right along that mass line. And I'm using a very light touch. You don't want to touch your marker to the paper too much because otherwise the color can actually bleed across the lines and seep out of the image. So if you're finding that your color is bleeding outside of your lines when you're coloring with your alcohol markers, it could be that you're holding your marker to your paper for too long. So now you can see I have my light area, I have my dark area. So now I'm going to take my medium tone, which is the dark Poppy Parade, and this time I'm using the brush tip, and I'm going to go over this dark cherry cobbler, but I'm not going all the way to the edge because I don't want to accidentally end up outside the lines, but I'm going over about half the cherry cobbler and bringing it over about half of the light Poppy Parade, like so. And then I'm going to come back with my light, and again I'm not extending all the way to the edge, and I'm just going to lightly go over the edge of that medium tone like so. And then the other sail I'm going to do in exactly the same way. Now for the boat, I'm going to start with my dark, and I'm going to start with the brush tip, and I'm just going to add color. I'm going to follow where this is already shaded in. You see here like this, so that's going to be some of my shadow. Got some shadow there, and then the back, there's going to be some shadow and a little bit along the top here. Now I'm going to come back in, or come in with my light smoky slate. I'm going to color over that edge, and I'm going to brush right over that dark color there, and then I'm going to fill in the rest of the boat area. And as I get to the top, because it's fairly fine, I'm going to switch to my bullet tip and use that just to color in this top area here. If you want to darken that shadow, you could go over it a second time, but I'm just going to leave that as is, and I'm going to show you what it looks like already fully colored. So here you can see that, like that. So now what I'm going to do is I want to die cut it. Now to die cut it, I'm using the coordinating die from the Smooth Sailing dies, and I'm going to be using my die cutting machine, but I'm going to be using the magnetic platform. So if your die cutting machine that you get has a magnetic platform available, I highly recommend that you get it because it makes die cutting like this much, much easier. What happens is this is actually magnetic, so you can see your die will stick to it. So I'm placing my stamped and colored image onto my sheet here, and then I'm positioning my die so that this edge of the die, I'm aligning it just to the outside of this edge of the sail here, like so. And you can see, so it looks like you just want to make sure that you can see, you want to make sure you can see this line, and you want to make sure you can see this line in the window of the die. Once you have it positioned, the magnet from the magnetic plate will hold it in place, and then you would simply put the cutting plate on top and run it through your die cutting machine. Now, if you don't have a magnetic plate, then you're going to want to use some kind of a low tack tape that you can tape down the edges to hold it in place as it's going through your die cutting machine. So I'm just going to go ahead and die cut that, and I will be back. So here you can see what my piece looks like now that it's been die cut. So the next thing I want to do is add just a very faint sparkle to the sail. So for that, I'm going to use my Wink of Stella brush pen. And this is a brush pen that has like a silvery glitter suspended in a clear liquid. And you can see the shine of the tip. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brush that over the surface of my sail. And I'm making sure not to go over the lines because I only want the surface of the sail to have the sparkle. I don't want anything else. So now if you look at this and you can see if I kind of angle it, you can see that faint shimmer. And I really like this because it's a very subtle effect. For men, you don't want an overly large amount of glitter. So now I'm just going to set this aside and let it dry, and we're going to work on our main panel. So I'm going to take a little bit of this Dotto removable adhesive, and I'm going to temporarily secure my embossed panel onto my grid paper sheet just so it doesn't slip while I'm working. Because now what I want to do is I'm going to add this blue ribbon. Now to hold the ribbon down, I'm going to use my tear and tape adhesive. Now this is, the top edge of the ribbon is about 2 inches up from the bottom edge of my card. So I'm just going to reposition this here so that it's aligned with one of my grid lines, because 8 of these little squares will be 2 inches. Now, if you have an acrylic graph ruler, of course, that's very helpful. So this is the 2-inch mark. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my ruler down a little bit so I know that I want my top edge of my tape to be aligned just below this line here. So I'm going to, so you can see this is on a roll. This is a double-sided tape. And I'm going to place it so it's a little bit lower than that line. And I want to stick it from edge to edge. And then I'm just going to press it down. And although you can tear this, I just prefer to use scissors because if you're touching the adhesive part, the oils from your fingers will make it lose some of that stickiness. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ribbon, and I want it to be a little bit longer than that area, because I want to wrap the ends around the back, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut that. Then I can carefully remove the backing and stick down my ribbon. Now, as you can see, the ends of this ribbon unravel pretty quickly, so you're going to want to secure that to the back. To do that, I'm going to use some more of this tear and tape adhesive, and I'm actually going to put it on the ribbon itself here. And then now I'm going to carefully peel the backing off. Whoops, I'm peeling the whole tape off. And then I'm going to stick it down. So there you can see how that looks. So my next step, now that I've secured my ribbon ends down, is to add some pattern paper strips. And I'm using pattern paper that comes from the Designer Series paper per color family. So I have here the Brights pack and the Neutrals pack. And in each pack, there's several sheets from each of the colors in that color family. I'm going to be using Smoky Slate from the Neutrals pack, and I'm going to be using this pattern that has this kind of weathered effect on one side, circles on the other. And I've cut a strip that's 3/8 of an inch wide. And then I'm going to be using this Poppy Parade in the other pattern, which is text on one side and wood grain. And again, I cut a 3/8 of an inch strip. Now, I wanted it on an angle. You can see here on my original card, I have these angled. So to create the angle, I simply used my paper snips. So you just cut on an angle like so. And then I need to trim it to size. So I want this to be about this length here. So I'm simply going to place that onto a small cutting mat, like so. And then I'm going to use an acrylic graph ruler, and I'm going to use an X-Acto knife. And then I'm trimming that straight. Now this gray piece I want a little bit longer, like so. So I'm going to move that one. I use the lines here to make sure that my cut is straight, so I'm aligning it with one of the horizontal lines, and then I'm using this vertical edge here to make sure that I cut this straight. Like so. So there you can see I have my 2 angled strips. Now I want to stick it onto my panel here. So for the first one, I'm just going to place this here so I can see about how much of this tear and tape adhesive I need. And I'm going to place a strip of my adhesive directly on top of the ribbon. Make sure I press that down to make it easier to remove the backing. And then I'm going to stick on that pattern paper strip. Now, because the ribbon extends a little bit past the edge of the card, I want to make sure that my paper actually covers the edge of the ribbon. So when I'm looking at it, when I have this layered on top of my blue card like this, I don't want to see any of the blue ribbon sticking out from behind this red paper strip. So I'm going to make sure that my red paper strip extends far enough. And I think that's covered like that. And then I'm sticking it to the ribbon. Now, this gray strip is going to slightly overlap this ribbon. So it's not going to be stuck down completely flat. So first, some of this fuzz from this ribbon, I'm just going to trim like that. And then now to stick this piece down, I'm going to take some of my Tombow Mono multi-liquid glue, and I'm just going to do a really thin line of glue underneath the ribbon, like so. And then this piece, as you can see, we're covering up that bottom edge of the ribbon. I want to make sure this is aligned again with the edge. And liquid glue takes a little bit of time to dry, so you do want to make sure, actually I'm going to place it on top of this just to make sure, again, that I'm extending this far enough. Liquid glue takes a little bit of time to dry, so you need to, as you're trying to glue this piece down, you need to hold it in place to give the glue a chance to set. So next, I'm going to be sticking this circle piece on, but before I can do that, I need to stick my seaweed on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it right to this paper piece. And just to make it clean and easy, I'm going to use my glue dots. So I'm going to take my seaweed piece, I'm going to stick it to a glue dot here, stick it to a glue dot there, and then I want to put it so that it's in about a half, the bottom edge is about a ½ inch in from the right edge of the card, like so. And as you can see, that is going to get hidden behind my circle. Now my next one, I want to stick down to this piece. However, I need to make sure that where I put my mini glue dot, it's hidden by my boat, because with vellum you can actually see right through it. So any adhesive would actually show through it, like show right through the vellum. So I'm going to put this, I think, if I put my boat, say like so, that means my vellum piece will go there. Now the easiest way to do this, rather than trying to get it back in the perfect place, is to hold it in place, pick off a little glue dot, lift this up, put the glue dot underneath, like so. So there you can see the glue dot's hidden behind the boat, and then the boat, once I stick it down, it's going to help hold that down. Now to stick the boat down, I'm just going to use my liquid glue. I'm going to just squeeze some of that on the back. Now usually when I'm using my liquid glue, I don't put it too close to the edges, because otherwise it'll squish out when you put it down. And I leave enough place to hold it with my fingers. So I want to position that so that it overlaps the bottom of that seaweed. I don't want to see any of that seaweed bottom coming out the bottom of the boat. And I have that sitting on top like so. So now that we have our boat attached, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my Stampin' Dimensionals on here, and we're going to actually stick it onto our panel. Now I want to make sure that I don't put any Stampin' Dimensionals, like the Stampin' Dimensionals are not going to sit on the ribbon, because that's going to give it extra height and it'll be lopsided. It's not going to sit flat. So as you can see, I'm just placing Stampin' Dimensionals along the top edge and along the bottom edge. So the ribbon is going to come in the middle here, and hopefully, now see, I should have taken a closer look at where the top and bottom edge was. Thankfully, I didn't press these down hard so I can shift them. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm just gonna stick this down. Okay, so you can see I have that piece stuck down. So now what I want to do is I want to create the happy. So for the happy, we have to get a little bit creative because part of the happy is going to be stuck on the panel, which as you notice is at a lower height than our die cut circle. So if we were to just take our happy sentiment and stick it down, what would end up happening is it would be raised in one area and then it would be flat on the other area here. And you can see it just looks really weird. So what we need to do is we need to build up part of the happy sentiment, so underneath this portion, so that it's level with the last two letters of the happy. So the actual happy die comes from the well-written framelits set, or the well-written die set, and I went ahead and die cut a whole bunch of pieces out of a piece of Night of Navy cardstock. So you can see I have lots of different pieces here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be layering. Now, whenever you layer pieces one on top of the other, you actually get, it looks different than if you look at a single piece. So I tried initially just layering under the first three letters and leaving these flat, and it looked really weird. So that's why we have to layer multiple pieces one on top of each other. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to layer probably 3 of these happies one on top of the other. So I'm going to start by just getting a little bit of this dimensional repositionable adhesive, and I'm holding this onto a scrap piece of paper. Now to stick these together, I'm going to be using my fine tip glue pen. I do like this glue, it's good for this kind of an application, but because these letters are so fine, this doesn't come out fine enough, and you don't want a lot of glue squishing out the edges. This one, as you can see, has like a needle point tip, so it's very easy to use. So what we're going to do is you're going to very lightly squeeze, and you're going to put glue on the letters, on the whole letter. And then you're simply going to take the next happy and you're going to layer that right on top. And because you're working with liquid glue, it has a little bit of drying time. So you have the opportunity to make sure these pieces are right on top of one another. And actually I'm just taking it off that repositionable adhesive and holding it because it's a little bit easier for me to see and make sure that they're layered. Now this glue does take a little bit of time to set, so you do want to just squeeze your pieces together and then give it a chance to dry. So now I'm going to do the second one. Each time you add a layer, you want to make sure they are right on top of each other. You don't want them to be offset at all, or that's going to change the look of your letters. So right now you can see we have 3 layered one on top of the other. So that's great, except that we still have the issue of it doesn't sit flat. So now we have to build up the HAP. But there's something that I need you to notice, and that is that the bottom portion of the P, because it's resting on the ribbon, it's a little bit higher again than the cardstock here. So while we need to build up the HAP here, we don't want to be building up the bottom of the P. So I'm going to add 3 of these partial die cuts that you see here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to you know what? I just realized it's not the appy I need, it's the hap I need. So you know what? We'll use these 2 and then I will die cut some more pieces. So I need the HAP, like so, and then I need to cut off the bottom part of that P. And actually, let's just see how much I need to cut off. A little bit more. Like so. So you can see HAP. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick 3 of these on the reverse side. So I'm going to use the liquid glue. I'm going to place it just between the H, the A, and the upper portion of the P, and then I'm going to stick that down, and I'm going to layer it 3 times. And then once I've done all 3, I will be back to show you what it looks like. Okay, so I finished layering the other 3 pieces. So now if we look at it from the side, you can see what this looks like. For the entire word happy, I layered it 3 times. And then I took just partial HAP with half the tail cut off and layered 3 of those behind the full happy. So you can see here, the height difference between the two pieces. So now if we sit this on our card like so, you don't have any height differential and the word sits straight flat across. Now I'm not going to stick it down yet because the next step I want to do is to create my greeting, and for that I want to stamp birthday. So the stamp set that I'm going to be using is this one here, Itty Bitty Birthdays, and I'm going to use They Say It's Your Birthday sentiment, and I'm going to stamp it onto this scrap piece of white cardstock in my Memento Tuxedo black ink. Even though I'm only using the birthday, I'm not going to bother masking because I'm just cutting the other pieces away. So I'm just inking my stamp and then stamping like so. And actually I didn't get that great of an impression there, so I'm going to do that again. That's better. And then I'm just going to use my paper snips to hand cut this out. So as I cut it, I just want to leave about 1/16 of an inch border. So here you can see what that looks like. Now, once again, this is going to be stuck partially on this panel and partially on the ribbons. So there's a couple things that you could do. You could put a mini Stampin' Dimensional underneath it, like this one, or you could build up with some cardstock pieces a couple of layers. And that's probably what I'm going to end up doing, simply because there's a couple of additional layers here of the ribbon. And if I put a Stampin' Dimensional, which these are the mini, but they're the same thickness as the big ones, if I use that, the front half is actually going to sit a little bit higher than the back half. So it's probably better if I just layer it with a couple little cardstock strips. So to do that, I simply want to cut some cardstock, like a strip of cardstock like this. But I only want it to be about that long. So you can cut, doesn't matter if it's cut perfectly or not. And it's probably easiest to use tweezers for this. So you're going to take your greeting, make sure you know which side is the back. So there you can see. I had already stamped on it and mucked up and stamped again. And then I'm going to take a little bit of my liquid glue. And you just want to make sure that the cardstock pieces that you're layering are smaller than the cardstock piece you're putting it on, so that you don't see it past the edges. So it's the same concept as what we did with the HAPPY. And now, so let's see, I think 2 layers, yeah, 2 layers is enough. So you can see we can put that on there, and when we stick it down, it will be the exact right height. So now we just need to create our little bow here. So for my bow, I'm using this 2-colored trim, and I don't know exactly how big of a piece I need, so I'm working on the roll. Basically, I'm going to leave a tail hanging, so I probably have a couple inches there, and then I'm going to create 2 little bunny ears. I don't know if you remember learning to tie your shoes like that. And then I'm going to tie a bow. I'm not the best bow tire. And then you just simply tug on the ends until you adjust the sizes of your loops, until you get a bow size that you like. And I think this one's a little bit, I think that's better. Like that, and then, you know what, let's shorten it just a little bit more. And then once you're happy with your bow size, you simply trim, and we can trim the ends after. So I'm gonna trim it like that. So now we can go ahead and start assembling things. I'm gonna put, before I stick these down, actually no, you know what, we're gonna stick that down, then I'll stick it on my card. So now I want to place my pieces onto my card. So the first one I'm going to put is this happy. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Tombow glue. And I'm just going to dip my fingers in that. Because remember I told you it's a little bit hard to apply it directly to the letters simply because a lot tends to squish out. So you can use your finger, or it's actually probably would have been better if I just used this toothpick to pick up little amounts and just spread it where I want. The reason I'm using this glue is if I have to reposition this and it accidentally squishes out from underneath the letters, I can use this little adhesive remover to fix it. So I want this to be kind of like that. Like so. I can clean up any little edges of glue with my toothpick, like so. And that looks straight. And then I'm going to take the birthday, and I want that, I'm going to use my tweezers just to hold that. I want that to sit kind of like that. So I'll add a little bit of glue to both sides. Like that, then give your glue a chance to set. Next, I want to put my ribbon, my little bow on there, and I want to put it, I think, right there. So to attach that, I'm going to use a glue dot, but what I want to do, because the glue dot is too big for it's much wider than the edge of the bow, I'm going to fold it in half like so. So I'm just using my paper piercing tool. I'm going to stick my glue dot right there, tuck the end a little bit underneath that area there, and then I can press the knot right into that glue dot. And then from there, I can go ahead and trim the ends, like so. So there you can see we've completely assembled our card. Now we're gonna mount it to the main panel. Now again, it's hard to do this flat because we have that dimension from the ribbon. So the easiest solution is simply just to use Stampin' Dimensionals. So I've attached my dimensionals, I've removed the backing. Now I'm going to center and stick this onto my note card front. Just want to make sure my note card is straight here. And then I want to center this. And I'm just going to lay it down lightly because I don't want it to stick in case I get it crooked. Once you're happy with the placement, you can go ahead and press it down. And there you can see you've created your card. Lots of steps, lots of elements, lots of different techniques, but you end up with a beautiful finished card that I think was well worth the effort. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, friends, and I will see you guys with another video tutorial soon. See ya.